Morning.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Hi, Simon. I'm Dave.
Hi, how's it going in the UK?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
You're in Ireland, aren't you?
No, I'm in Malta.
Malta. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How's it going down there?
Well, I mean, we're still open here for business. Hospitality is still ongoing, but numbers are low, of course, because people are not traveling that much.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So we've got to work with what we have at the moment.
Yeah. So what kind of hotel is it, or is it a hotel?
It is a boutique hotel in the capital in Valletta.
Oh, it sounds lovely. I bet the weather's amazing at the moment.
Well, I mean, this past 2 days has been rainy, but yes, it's been in the mid-20s to 30s, so it's good weather.
Lovely, yeah, absolutely lovely. I've actually never been to Malta, and this may be very, very hopeful, but we're looking at our holiday for next year, and we want to do a sailing holiday. And somebody suggested,
Simon.
Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Robin? I don't think you hear us.
Robin.
Can't hear us.
Are you speaking to somebody else, Dave, or are you trying?
No.
I hear you.
Oh, wait a minute. He is sane. He's talking to me.
Can you hear us?
All right, sorry.
It's
me who had my volume off.
There you go. Now we can hear. So.
Yeah. It's been a long morning already.
Hi, good morning, Robin.
Hi, Simon. Hi, Dave. How are you both?
I'm all right. How's business for you?
Well, it's progressing. There's quite a few leads out there, so yeah, it's a difficult time, but yeah,
it is. But I've had some inquiries for consulting, some of which are kind of financing oriented. Just wondering if you had capacity, if you were.
I've always got capacity.
Okay, cool. Then maybe offline later we can chat.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. Morning, Kat.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, Robin. How are you?
Good morning, Kat.
Okay, how are you?
Very well. Yeah.
Good. Morning, Ian.
I think Ian doesn't have his audio yet either.
No.
Oh, the excitement of Zoom these days.
Yes. Still, you get through a lot of meetings with.
And no travel, and that does make you more productive, I think. It's not driving around the country.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of business we need. It's counterproductive for hospitality.
It's very true. Yeah. Who'd have thought we were going to be threatened by Zoom?
Yeah, but no, it's changing the environment, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, very much so. I'm going to go close my office door.
Well, it's changing, and we don't know when it's going to stop changing and what the end result is going to be.
No.
It feels like there's a lot of pent-up demand that people want to get out again and want to have face-to-face meetings again. I think it's been so many months now that we've all been on Zoom. There feels like there's quite a lot of pent-up demand, and even in my local pub, I can spot the business meetings happening during the day, and thinking, oh, okay, they can't meet in their office, but they're coming out to meet in cafes, pubs. So
yeah, and sorry, I was going to say, I think that's almost the way a lot of things will go forward. There's a lot of people talk about these internet cafes or these places where you can go and work and then have a coffee, and you've got your decent Wi-Fi and everything. And people will end up even if they're working from home, they'll end up migrating to these places to actually be an environment where there are lots of people doing the same thing, but just with a different company. So, yeah.
I think
And
that
for the frame of mind, you need to get out of the house. You can't just stay there.
Yeah.
And during the recession of 2008, I remember when everything dried up, but it really boomerangs back in the early part of 2009 because people want to meet up and people actually want to travel. So I think at some point this is going to sort itself out, and then it's going to really boomerang back. It's just whether we can survive it until then or not.
Yeah. Morning, Julian. Morning, Nigel.
Morning. How are we doing?
Fine, fine.
Good.
Bristol today, unfortunately.
Well, no, I noticed the number of woolly jumpers that appear to be coming out as well. So clearly, winter is setting in. Are we going to have a Christmas jumper version?
I don't know.
yeah, we should.
I like to get to the heart of the matter early on. You see.
Yeah. I was looking at the timings the other week, and I says there's one. The next one of them should fall on the 22nd of December, and I was sort of thinking, is it too close to Christmas, or should it actually be something more sort of Christmassy, just to have that sort of?
Yeah, we can share Christmas recipes.
Yeah.
But the risk of saying something deeply unpopular and really, really, really bad, some of us might have time on our hands for that morning meeting. I mean, that might not be the right thing to say, but let's add a little humour at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Morning, Mark. Morning, Neil.
Morning.
How are we all?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning,
Morning.
Terry.
Good morning.
Morning all.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm muting myself. Yeah, good. Sun is shining for a change.
Ah.
Yeah.
You.
I know what. No.
Sun is shining. Where are you? Where is the sun shining this morning?
Cheshire.
Where?
Cheshire.
Oh, I thought you said Perthshire. I was a bit jumping.
Similar.
That's what I thought he said as well. Not in my bit of Scotland. No.
No.
The thing is, it could be bucket and rain where I am. It's kind of something to do with Scotland. It can be bucket and rain where I am, and 10 minutes down the road, it could be glorious sunshine. So, not unusual, Terry. You could be basking in glorious sunshine, and
well, actually, last time we were on here, it was glorious weather. I'm sitting in Dundee at the minute, which allegedly is the sunshine capital of Scotland.
I thought it was always sunny in Dundee.
But I'll have you know, it's not sunny here this
I'm not
morning.
sure it always is, but having spent much time up there, I'm not entirely sure it's always a sunshine capital. I could be wrong. Ayrshire has the same claim to fame as well, from memory.
I think it's got the same claim to fame, except when the Open is at Troon, Julian.
That'll be it. That'll be it.
There is that qualification. Whenever the Open's at at Troon, then you get 30-mile-an-hour sideways horizontal winds.
It reminds me of when I used to work in Gibraltar. Being a British colony, it had its own cloud. You walk across the border from the Spanish border, and suddenly it just start raining. It was quite amazing.
Very true, yeah.
Right. Well,
you're muted.
Unmuted, just in case it's a hello.
I don't think you shouldn't do.
Getting up to good level of people at the moment. Morning, Roy. I was going to say, Roy, you're you're on your side.
I was a bit upside down then. Morning, Robin. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, fine. You?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Right. Well, 10 o'clock. I thought I'd just start. I mean, don't want to promote too much discussion, but what do we think of what's going on in with now that Boris has announced his latest thing? Have we got Joseph on yet? Because Joseph was supposed to join us new today. No, he's in Liverpool.
Hi, Jeff.
No. Barry, what's the situation up there? Because as usual, Scotland's taking a different tack. How is it?
I don't think I'm over exaggerating, Robin, to say pretty grim, I think is the honest answer. Yes, as you say, Scotland, as often seems to be the case, taking a slightly different tack. If you relate what's happening north of the border to the information that was published late last night in terms of the sage advice to the Westminster government, you could maybe argue that Holyrood is more closely following the scientific advice than Westminster. The situation north of the border, for those that aren't entirely familiar with it, as of last Friday, we went into a kind of two-level system. The majority of Scotland licensed premises are now limited to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. service without alcohol. There is a real focus north of the border to prohibit the service and sale of alcohol. Outside of the central belt, what we refer to the middle bit of Scotland, kind of Edinburgh, Stirling, across to Glasgow, outside of the central belt, licensed premises can still serve outdoors only. Any of you familiar with the Scottish climate, in the middle of October, if you want to be having a pint or a glass of wine outside at 9 o'clock at night, rather you than me, is what I would say, although I've seen a few hearty souls. If you are in the central belt of Scotland, so that is an area stretching from Ayr up to sort of Glasgow, across to Edinburgh and up as far as Stirling, then pretty much all licensed premises are now closed. The real bone of contention in Scotland is that there's been this definition that's been made between cafes and all other hospitality venues. If you're a cafe, whether licensed or not, if you're a cafe, you're allowed to remain open for the service of sort of tea, coffee, snacks. If you're a restaurant, a hotel, hotels can only function for residents. Hotels can't serve non-residents at the moment. And if you're a restaurant, then, well, basically you've had it. You need to shut the doors. As I saw one restaurant owner in Glasgow commenting on social media this morning, they need 30,000 a week to break even. They weren't achieving that before the restrictions were put in place last week. And as of Friday, they've not got a hope in hell. So, in summary, Robin, pretty grim. It's meant to be for a 16-day period, but there's absolutely no guarantees that come another 10 days' time that the restrictions are going to be lifted. My personal hunch, I think it's probably unlikely that the restrictions are going to be lifted in 10 days' time. I think we're likely to see it extended.
Great.
And those south of the border, what do we think of the idea of this of like the keeping them? Well, it's sort of like this 10 o'clock curfew is sort of. Does it make sense at all? Do you think? Anybody free to?
Yeah, Robin, I think it's a job to know what to think, really. You know, I don't think they're going to be moving on the 10 o'clock curfew. I think they've pretty much laid out their stall of the 3-tier scenarios. Just depends on what tier you fall into. I know there's a lot of noise from the industry with regards to the government should release the evidence that says that the hospitality industry is increasing the COVID cases, because the stats say the stats that the hospitality industry have got say they're not, and there's been several cases of several people making noises about legal challenges to that. I really don't think that's going to go anywhere. I don't think that's going to make any difference. They've got to listen to the scientists. They're damned if they do, damned if they don't. You know, quite interestingly, though, I was reading some of the legislation that was coming out yesterday, and I think one thing that's going to be quite topical is what is the definition of a substantial meal. If you go back to the old Licensing Act, there was some case law on that, and they said a cheese sandwich was not a substantial meal. However, a cheese and pickle sandwich was. A bag of crisps wasn't, but a bag of crisps with a pickled egg was. We had some things going on. We've got a licensing lawyers WhatsApp group. Apparently, the UK Housing Secretary has said that a Cornish pasty with chips or a side salad counts as a substantial meal. So there's going to be, you know, people saying, well, what is substantial? People trying to make their own ideas on what that is, so that they can continue to trade, albeit a reconstructed restaurant as such. So it's going to be an interesting space over the next few weeks.
Okay. David, did I see you join us? How's Ireland getting on?
Oh yeah, good morning, folks. How are you all? Sorry I was late. How's it going? Well, today is budget day here in Ireland. We're not expecting much from the government in terms of you know, practical supports for the industry. And when I say practical, the VAT rate is likely to be cut from 13.5% down to 9%, which worked previously. However, that only worked because people were actually travelling and able to move from county to county. Currently, we're all on what's called level 3. There are 5 levels in total. Level 5 being complete lockdown. Level 3 means you can't travel between counties. So hotels are having to rely on, if you like, folks staying within their county, perhaps going away for date nights, etc. We've seen some popularity in that regards for hotels. Again, they're typically one-night stays, and they tend to be at the weekends. Although I suspect with the number of people working from home now, they're probably traveling during midweek as well, although it's too soon to say. Just in terms of food and bev, though, you know, pubs, restaurants have effectively closed, because the only provision for providing service to folks is that if you can cater for them outside, which a lot of pubs and restaurants can't do, and really customers won't do because, you know, it's October. So in terms of you know, practical supports for the industry, it does smack a bit of deck chairs and on the Titanic, because you know, the fact of the matter is that literally millions of bed nights have been lost and will have been lost for this latest lockdown, which will last until the 27th of October. It's likely it's going to be extended for at least another week, possibly fortnight, which will coincide with an extension of the midterm break. And then you're effectively into the lead up to Christmas. Some people are saying perhaps that the restrictions might be imposed to last till after Christmas, just to try and, you know, as referring to it as a circuit breaker. What is the impact of this? Well, again, it's just more of the same, folks. I think realistically, no end of schemes, I think, which are being provided for by our respective governments, really are going to make a huge impact to our businesses without any inbound travel, without any business travel, without the return of international flights, without anything other than perhaps domestic demand. So realistically, I think people should be looking at, and again, this is a traditionally very quiet time of the year for a lot of hotels. Realistically, I think the only alternative at this point in time is for hotels to consider cocooning themselves until perhaps February, March next year, and to conserve whatever reserves that you've managed to generate over the course of July, August, September. Which means effectively that we're looking now at, if not temporary layoffs, redundancies. And again, we've discussed this before. Again, that's what our respective governments are frightened of, because again, you can only lay off people for a certain period of time temporarily before it moves to redundancy. Hotels don't have the monies to fund that, and certainly governments don't want to see dole queues going up exponentially. But the reality is that we have little or no alternative, I think, but to really consolidate our businesses and trying to dream up. I see, for example, just as an anecdote, Singaporean Airlines, they have an aircraft on the ground apparently in Kuala Lumpur somewhere, which they're now making available for diners to come in and experience a first-class meal while it's on the ground. It doesn't take off. By all accounts, it's proved to be very, very popular, but these are just novelty initiatives. Single-handedly, they're not going to save that airline, and single-handedly, those sorts of initiatives are not going to make a difference to our business or our industry. So it's coming to a stage now, I think, where we all have to get to a pragmatic point and say, right, look, there's just going to be no show in town until early 2021. Best thing I can do now is conserve my losses and batten down the hatches, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything more to add to that before we start on the first presentation? Anybody have any thoughts? Do you think UK is going to get to that stage? Obviously, it seems as though the restrictions are a lot harder in Ireland. Do we see Boris getting eventually to that stage?
No takers.
No comment.
I think, I mean, my take on that question, Robin, I think we're maybe likely to see the four home nations of the UK kind of cementing their different approaches. Boris seems to be very, very reluctant to take harsher measures. Scottish government seem, more pragmatic about it, and will, in their eyes, will do what needs to be done, kind of no matter the consequences. Without becoming political, because it's very easy for that to become a political argument. Wales, equally, take, the Welsh devolved government taking a pretty hard line on things in terms of personal movements, the travel restrictions that have been brought into place in Wales. In the central belt here in Scotland, we're being discouraged from travelling out with your local area, but there's no hard and fast restriction in place. The Welsh have gone a step further and said, don't travel out, and also don't travel in. So I'm noting Nicola's comment that they've lost a coach booking for this weekend. I was kind of reflecting on the irony that coach parties notoriously don't actually spend very much at the bar, but if the bar's restricted or it's not available, a huge deal breaker in terms of that. But the fact that booking's cancelled is probably more likely of the travel restrictions in Wales that they're not allowed out. It is what it is, isn't it? It is what it is, and we're just got to kind of find the very few positives in the situation that there are, and I think we probably are at the time really to start seriously reflecting on what David was commenting on there of cocooning, closing down, winter closure, however you want to call it. Is it actually viable for you to trade in the short term right now? And I think it's pretty difficult to put a positive spin on that.
Just to add perhaps to that, Barry, if I can. I mean, one further compounding issue is the issue of Brexit, and increasingly that seems to be moving towards a no-deal Brexit. which is very unfortunate because you'll have a Mexican standoff effectively between the European Union and the UK. And again, on a practical level, one of the impacts of that will be interruptions to supply chains. So even from a point of view, if you're, for example, to be open, there is a very, very strong likelihood that, for example, supplies to hotels, restaurants, bars, etc., that do manage to trade through this particular phase in the pandemic, that it's going to be increasingly difficult to ensure that you're getting deliveries on time. I mean, if you look, for example, just at the measures they've put in place, various. Now, a lot of us are supplied locally, which is good, which is fine, but that does have a knock-on impact in terms of delivery times, lead-ins, and importantly, costs. And if you can't be guaranteed that your supply chains are, the integrity of those is guaranteed, and we take a lot for granted, I suppose. It's only when issues arise that we begin to realise that, well, we're actually quite vulnerable. Brexit has a real opportunity, has real potential rather to add further to this difficulty. I think we all realise that. We're not quite sure how, but it's not going to be easy to trade through Brexit either. Even if we dealt with Brexit alone, I think we would still be intrigued to a particularly challenging.
Well, and with that,
just quickly, I think the challenge is there isn't anything that is being measured against. I suppose that's the challenge with anything. In business, you'd say if you do this, you get that, right? So ultimately, we do this, this, and this. This is what we're looking for. This is what the measurements are going to be, and this is what you get, right? But the problem is there isn't any of that. So that doesn't create a lot of hope, does it? Because there isn't any. Well, if you close down, to the 16th of, close down for 16 days, and this is what happens, then this is what the outcome's going to be. And therefore, at the end of the day, it's much more, you can get your mind around that as a business operator. The challenge is it's a little bit, they're shooting in the dark. It's become a political football between all four nations, which is obviously a concern for us as an industry because we spread across all those four nations with collaboration. And it isn't, well, close it down. And if I see this happening, this is what the outcome's going to be. And unfortunately, that isn't the case. So a blight Brexit, and I don't know how influential Brexit will end up being, to be quite honest with you, because the supply chain, as David said, is important, but it becomes less important if you don't have if the business is closed anyway. So the irony of it is, a no-deal Brexit is looking likely, but actually that might not be the worst outcome, or should I say, an outcome that isn't as damaging because most of the businesses are closed anyway. Not that we want to have that, but I mean, it's just a huge, huge challenge.
Indeed. We'll see what happens. I read a lot about the politics, and I also have a strong feeling that Boris is going to have to drop his pants very soon. But that's that's possibly wishful thinking, just because of what you see on other sides of the coin. We'll see. Let's move on to the first presentation. I'm going to mute everybody, and then Sarah, if you can unmute and give us your analysis of where we are with hotel revenues these days.
Good morning, everybody. I've just put a few slides together. Let me just, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So I've just put a few slides together, just have a quick glance over the last 28 days and then a forward view for the main four markets in Scotland. So just looking at we have to take this with a broad brush because a lot of the supply has changed, but this is as at the 3rd of October for the previous 28 days. So no surprises there. London, Gatwick, Heathrow, Birmingham are struggling. Glasgow, we can see they're struggling just under the 40% occupancy mark. Edinburgh is sitting around about 50% occupancy. Bristol seems to be performing quite well, 60% occupancy. Again, this is based on sort of September stats. Moving forward, I've just looked at Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Inverness. But again, we have to bear in mind we're working like a week behind. So this is as at the 3rd of October. And then we've got the next 8 weeks ahead in terms of occupancy on the books. So if we look at week commencing the 12th is the first blue line, and then it's every week thereafter up until week commencing the 30th of November. So Inverness, very strong demand still for this next week ahead, and the following week, obviously capturing, still, domestic leisure demand for half-term school holidays. Having said that, this is such a moving piece. So even though this was as at, the 3rd, these new stats will come out later today, which will be, what has changed across this last week, because it is such a moving beast and it changes quite dramatically, as we know, with every announcement from one day to the next, from 1 week to the next. Interestingly enough, Glasgow and Edinburgh, if you look at their stats for week commencing the 23rd of November and week commencing the 30th of November, their forward occupancy is slightly stronger and it's driven by weekend business. So midweek is relatively flat, but we're seeing some high occupancies across weekends for Glasgow and Edinburgh for the tail end of November and moving into December. And like I said, this can change from one day to the next with, hotels promoting flexible cancellation terms, etc. The business on the books, it's almost like, how safe is this business on the books? If it's on a flexible cancellation, then it can be there one day and gone the next. And I think I just wanted to share with you, what are we doing in terms of our pricing, just to have a look at. I'm just going to show you an example hotel of who will remain nameless. So this is a rate shopping screen where we see this particular hotel. It's the same competitor set across 7 days. They have, for some reason, a higher price. They're 34 to 47% higher than their competitors across midweek days, whereas they're sort of in line across the weekend. So this is just a hotel that's maybe not adapting and not reacting to change. So this tells me that the competitor set have dropped or readjusted their pricing strategy for midweek days, but the hotel in question hasn't followed suit. So I think we need to be looking forward, adjusting to market trends, keeping an eye on our competitors just to see what they're doing, just so we can keep on top of what we are our price position within the market. Because this hotel, there's no reason why there would be above the competitor in terms of price midweek and then below at the weekend. It's the same product after all, so the customer's getting the same product across 7 days of the week. So this is just maybe the hotel not keeping up with trends and what the competitors are doing. So I mean, we know the market is still very much reactive, still very much domestic led, and the last slide just shows that we do need to adapt, again, adapt on a daily, weekly basis. I think as well, it's, we know the need for owners to have cash through the door. Cash is obviously king, and it might just be that cash flow, or the need for cash flow, is compromising maybe rate integrity. So maybe a hotel that would have sat higher than the market is just driving their rate down slightly to get customers through the door, thinking about the on spend and the F&B spend. So the more customers at a lower rate is better, because they're going to spend more. But just an example, hotel in Skye, which across the summer will be selling at 300 quid a night is, you know, selling at 60 quid a night, because that's, in their mind, that's what they need. That's the number of customers they need to get through the door to stay afloat, basically, factoring in everything else, F&B spend. We're seeing the last wave of announcements again. Bear in mind, this is as at the 3rd of October. So there are some cancellations coming through on the day or the day after announcements. But again, things are sort of stabilising within a day or so. So we get cancellations and we see negative pickup, but then we see positive pickup like the few days later. So the cancellations are not in any way as severe as what they were earlier in the year. Utilise all available tools. I mean, my go-to tool is OTA Insight, the rate shopping tool, which is for the previous screen, so we can keep tabs on what the competitors are doing and just check price position within the market, I think is key at this time. Forward data, so OTA Insight, you know, they do a free trial, so you can get that, there's no cost involved. Forward Star, again, this will give you a forward view of rooms sold across key markets. Again, that's completely free of charge. So it's just a way to see how the market is performing across the next few weeks ahead. And I think using the analytics and the data insights in OTA, extranets, Booking.com and Expedia are invaluable as well. So for just an example, I've got some broad stats just for Scotland from a leading OTA provider. So again, this is based on the last couple of weeks. So 50% of reservations over the last couple of weeks have come in between 0 and 6 days. So we know the lead time is still very, very, very short. The average length of stay is 3.2 days. So people are still booking that longer stay. 90% of bookings are for hotels as opposed to service departments or alternative accommodation. And there's 10% of reservations that have come in over the last 2 weeks that are for 121 days plus. So people are thinking about next year, but it's just a small proportion of people that are thinking that far ahead. But we do see some reservations coming from the US market, albeit quite small for next summer as well. So even though the booking window is very short, we still need to be mindful of what is happening across, you know, next year summer as well. And then obviously it goes without saying, Robin, you'll advocate this, cost control, tight cost control is key alongside everything else that we are all doing. But I just wanted to share the stats because I think a lot of the times people are looking at their business on the books and think, oh, it looks grim. But I mean, I think if we know that that's how the market is behaving, it's somewhat, well, not reassuring, but it just means that you're not doing anything wrong and you're not doing, you know, you're not missing a trick, because that's just how the market is performing. And obviously, if anybody wants any information or any help, then please just get in touch or drop me a line. I'll drop these slides over to Robin as well.
Sarah, Neil's commented in the north of England with where that's the big focus. Do you see have you seen much information on what's happening in specifically those areas that are sort of more closed down?
I haven't, no, but I can. So what in specifically, what is it that you're looking for, Neil? And then I can try and get some more information. What is it that you need? Just
very obviously, there's been a lot of focus on the north of England, especially around, you know, Liverpool, and they are going into tier 3. And I'm just wondering, you know, I know in Scotland there was a lot of, when the new restrictions were applied in the central belt, there was a rush to cancel, and I just thought, well, is that reflected in the north as well of England with these new announcements from Boris?
Yeah, I mean, in Newcastle, when the announcement, I mean, aside from Boris's announcement yesterday, the Newcastle or the northeast we've been in lockdown for well, 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks ago, so we did see a wave of cancellations sort of 3 weeks ago, certainly in the Newcastle market, but there is still some pickup. So I think it just depends on when restrictions come out. It's about, you know, the customers, you know, thought process, their buying behaviour, where can they travel to. So they might cancel a reservation that they've got in Newcastle and go somewhere else. So they may still be travelling, but they're just changing and adapting where they're going to as and when restrictions come out. But Newcastle, you know, the pickup is very slow. Manchester, sort of the northwest. I mean, for November, we've got a few hotels across the northwest. Occupancy wise, I mean, they're looking midweek at around about the 4-5% occupancy. So it is, I mean, like Barry said, it is what it is. But what we have to realise as well is cities like Liverpool, which are very much event-led cities, there are no events. So they're relying solely on domestic travel. And I think the media are not helping when they're saying that that's a hotspot for, you know, for coronavirus, or the infection rate is particularly high. But I think if you were to look at a hotel in specific segments, if you look at, you know, the C&E, if you looked, I mean, there's not much point looking at year on year, but if you're looking at what you would normally get through meetings and events, led business, what you would normally get through domestic leisure, it's just the domestic leisure that you can compare, because that's the only segment really that that is, you know, there at the moment. So yeah, Newcastle, I mean, if I was to run these stats again in 2 weeks, it could be a completely different, well, it probably will be a completely different picture, because obviously these are a week behind, and with the announcements just coming out yesterday, we haven't really seen that impact yet.
Yeah, just reading a bit what Tim has commented on Bournemouth, that a lot of the hotels seem to be either closed or closing down for the winter, and most of it's brand work, brand companies that are getting that, which is interesting, because Bournemouth's probably in one of the safer zones in the country if you look at the map. So yeah. Even the safe areas don't seem to be getting much benefit from it.
Hi, Robin. Yeah, it's very different down here. Summer's been crazy, really crazy. We're seeing in the last few weeks since this 10 p.m. curfew a mass drop. The problem down here is obviously what happens, like everywhere else, I expect. People now, there's still tourists coming because they still want to get out, but the sort of younger age tourist or person that gets away for a weekend, they come down and there is nowhere to go, so the beach is getting still hammered even in the winter, and there's parties happening on the beach even in the rain. And there's a thing in the local paper there where people are going and there's parties happening under the pier and all sorts of things happening. So, but it was very interesting in Sarah's presentation, because she brought up the OTA insights. And I think what's really interesting is down here, we're seeing midweek hotels, especially brands, Mercure, we've got Holiday Inn, we've got Accor, IHG, brands, Hilton. Their midweek trade is much busier than their weekends, hence why the rate midweek is a lot higher than weekends. We're not seeing the transient as much, the transient guest. If we are seeing a transient guest there, if you just go on Voucher, Groupon and type in Bournemouth, if you type in Groupon in Bournemouth, there is one chain, Oceania Group, and you will see every hotel, they are doing ridiculous deals. So everybody's fighting for the same business, and there are hotels that are closing just for the winter. There's even like down to Britannia, as I put in the comments, you know, they're even closing hotels down here where everything was jam-packed solid in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. There's definitely every hotel has to have a cost analysis, doesn't it, to see whether it's actually more cost effective to almost hibernate or whether it's cost effective to keep on struggling. And those that hibernate, in a way, will benefit those that don't, because at least there'll be less supply.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
so it's a sort of, it's almost a case of who helps who.
Well, exactly. I mean, I look after a hotel just on the outskirts of Birmingham. I mean, Birmingham is really struggling, but the hotel performed better during lockdown because of the supply impact, exactly like that, Robin. So because there was limited supply, this hotel, performed well with what corporate traveller was or key worker demand. So now that all of the hotels in Birmingham are open now over the summer, this hotel is struggling, and it is just supply and demand. So the more if hotels shut or hibernate over the winter, then the Groupon and voucher ideas, they may just be diluting what they could get if the supply decreases.
Yeah, they're very dangerous, those sources of business, because at the end of the day, they don't actually bring you much profit, but they just dilute the market and make it hard for everybody else to actually to make a decent business. So yes, worrying times. Just as an aside, there's a little conversation going on in the chat about licensing laws. Andy Merrick, just what do we know exactly about, at least in the UK, about whether people can drink or not drink and that? Do you have any clearer idea?
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as I know, a hotel room is absolutely fine, because it is your own room. And if you want to take alcohol in there, then that's absolutely fine, but they can't sell it to you. There is, I'd say after 10 o'clock, but there is actually, and I'm thinking about this, there is a facility to sell alcohol after 10 o'clock for pickup. I'm going to have to look this one up, because I don't think anybody's really sort of drilled into it, but this could work for hotels. So you could still do room service, yeah, in the hotel potentially. I'm happy to just look that up if you don't mind, Robin, and then you can just send a circular out on that one. I'll just give you the chapter and verse on it. But basically, I think you are okay from a hotel to supply, as long as you've got an off-sales license, okay, which you will have on a hotel. But to supply, actually, that might not work either. Sorry, I'm just thinking about the guidance, and there's guidance about if people order it, as long as you can take it out to their vehicle, but they must be seated in a vehicle to collect it. So just, let me have a look at it. Okay? Sorry, I've got to say, there's so much legislation that has come out in the last few weeks, and only yesterday, the guidance I had, I'm just looking on my phone now, but basically I think within an hour after or whilst the Prime Minister was speaking, from about 7 o'clock yesterday, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of guidance, different pieces of guidance for different areas and different lockdown situations for different areas that came out within the space of an hour. Trying to keep track of all that is just a minefield. It is difficult. What I would advise people to do is go on the .gov, look at the guidance for their area and just concentrate on that. But for the general public, 10 o'clock is what it is, and people must be out of any licensed premises by 10 o'clock. I don't see there's no way around that. And the idea is, what they're trying to do, obviously, is stop the amount of contact between different people. So they're not stopping people, drinking in their own homes. They're stopping people mixing in the homes. They're stopping people mixing in bars and restaurants. So you can understand what their theory is behind it. It's not the consumption of alcohol. It's just to stop the need for people to go and congregate. So.
Yeah, I heard one person say yesterday that one scientific say that actually it's the fact that once you've had a couple of drinks, you don't take as much care about actually how close you're getting to other people and everything, and that seems to be the sort of what they're using as the excuse for sort of like the alcohol prohibitions and everything.
Well, look, I think there is an element of that. There's bound to be an element of that, as we all know. When we've had a few drinks, we do tend to be less aware and less cautious. So there's going to be an element of that, but there is also, they're shutting down obviously gyms in some places. It's also to do with this, just trying to stop this close contact. So I don't think alcohol is the big trigger as such. It's the congregation and the mass of people, and the people getting there as well. And of course, one of the big issues we've got now is this 10 o'clock curfew, and everybody kicking out at 10 o'clock. And we've seen the scenes on in the cities, and the cities being full of people at 10 o'clock dispersing. I was told the other day that the tubes in London were absolutely rammed at after 10 o'clock, between sort of 10 and 11 o'clock, were absolutely rammed, which it's a nonsense. It's doing exactly the opposite of what they're trying to do. So how they're going to get around that, I don't know. They need to address those problems as well.
And it is strange to think that the supermarkets can still sell alcohol in an uncontrolled environment where there's no training for the cashier about how to dispense alcohol, but actually in a hospitality controlled environment, we cannot dispense alcohol. I mean, it is beyond belief how the supermarkets have made more money than in the history of their existence, yet the hospitality business, who has well-trained staff, know exactly what they're doing, have followed all the regulations, cannot dispense alcohol.
I couldn't agree more. There has always been this, and I've campaigned well before COVID, about the differential between off sales and on sales, and the supermarkets. How somebody can walk into a supermarket, buy a bottle of vodka, go outside on the park bench and down it all. Whereas in a pub, you can't sell somebody alcohol if they're drunk. Well, you can't do it in supermarket either. But it's controlled environment. It's in 25 or 35 ml measures or multiple of, etc., etc. You've got all the controls in place and legislation in place. It isn't a fair playing field. It is wrong, and there needs to be more legislation with off sales, but I don't think that's going to be top of the agenda at the moment.
No. Have any companies tried to do early birds on food to get people in, sort of like 5 o'clock sort of thing? I mean, because in general the British public tend to eat earlier. It's just with this whole point about stopping at 10. Has anybody heard of any companies almost trying to encourage that extra business early on?
There is actually, funnily, this morning there's seems to be a bit of a movement to people saying, well, a new slogan, eat early, to help out people opening earlier, encouraging people to come out earlier, and basically rethink their social life and how they operate their social life.
Because picking up from people who are not in the industry, who are more used to have worked in offices and now don't have to commute. I think I hear a lot about people saying, well, as being as I don't have to commute, I can actually stop at 5 o'clock and and go out and have something to eat with family or
and I think that is certainly happening already. I think I've mentioned before, we've got several clients in London. If you go into the city, they're absolutely dead. You go slightly outside, you go into zone 2, zone 3. There are a lot of businesses that are doing very well because there is more residential people, and they are working from home rather than going into sort of zone 1 and the city as such. You know, and so there is a definite change in the way people are given their leisure and etc. So yeah, it's just, look, it's a change in what it's provided, is a change in culture that we shouldn't see as necessarily a temporary change. So once COVID has gone, whenever that may be, it's not going to revert back to normal. This is going to be the new norm in some shape or form. And you know, we must react to it now, rather than thinking, well, I'm just going to hibernate, hackle down, and then once COVID is gone, we'll be back to where we were. That isn't going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish, you know, to try and preempt where this is going and how this is going to affect. We know there's going to be a huge amount of casualties. You know, it is already starting. We are seeing the start of, with the end of the furlough coming up, a lot more of the big chains consulting insolvency practitioners about their liquidity and how they can restructure to get through this, and what their options are. That is going to filter down to the smaller groups, multiples and individuals. You know, there is going to be a lot of carnage out there, and all I can say is, you know, adapt, look, see what's going on, adapt, take, if you're not in a position, you know, if you do think you need advice, get advice early, don't leave it to the last minute. You know, yeah, it's not good, but don't ask me exactly where it's heading, because nobody knows at the moment.
Mr. King, can I just make a comment about insurance, just in case I forget? It's been mooted that if you were successful with your first insurance claim around complete lockdown, there could be an opportunity for a second bite based around the fact that you're going into local lockdown. So you were locked down based on a national coverage. You were then allowed to reopen again based on an instruction. And now people are being asked to close again on a local level. So it's definitely worth looking at your insurance policy and deciding whether you have an opportunity for a further claim around local lockdown, which is being enforced upon you after being told that you could reopen again.
Well, hopefully that'll be a lifeline to some companies. Moving on to something a little more light-hearted then, before we, Sarah, if you could share your screen, and we'll call on Terry to give us some facts and information on food safety to just finish off today. Have you unmuted?
Hello there. Can you see my presentation? Okay.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Hopefully you can see the full screen rather than my notes pages. What do you see?
Just the full screen with the food safety.
That's great news. Every day is a school day. Hi everybody. Yes, it all sounds a bit bleak at the minute, but let's just say we're all here. We're still in the game so far, and this will pass. It's maybe going to take some time, but we are going to come through the other side. So, not really in an effort to try and cheer you up, but just talking about something a wee bit different that will impact all of us is the topic of food safety. So I would just ask you to have a think about what your food safety armour is within your own business, with the objective of risks be gone, minimising the opportunity for risks to come into your business. And you might not be thinking about this as your top priority at the minute, but ultimately, when we are back at full strength, and even in between, we want to be protecting our business, and particularly consumers and residents in the process. So I'll just give you a brief whistle-stop tour about who I am. I'm Terry Gardiner, Food Safety Consulting. I worked in food manufacturing predominantly for about 25 years, concentrating on principally food safety, food quality management systems, etc. And it was great fun, involved in very many things, but laterally I am in business for myself and supporting other businesses, and really taking a step to focus specifically on making sure that the foods are safe. And that's not just in foods that are manufactured that we all go and buy in the supermarkets, as you can see in the spread behind me. I have worked with all of these businesses here, and it's great, lots of learning and continuing to learn. But we each, whether we are a hotel business, we all go to hotels. We're all eating in hotels at some point or other. And we want to know that when we go there, the food and the service that we're getting is great and it's safe. And particularly if you are the owner or a manager within that business, you want to make sure that it is full of integrity and you're not likely to be causing harm to anybody. But even more than that, whether something very unfortunate could happen, what do you have behind you to demonstrate that you've done everything you possibly could and that in fact you did what you should have been doing? So we'll take a quick look at that. So the aim is really just a sense check on what your food safety armour might be, to demonstrate why it's essential for you, because you don't know, of course you know. So just really a refresher, and to discuss any benefits and consequences of that. But really for me to get a sense check as to what it feels like to be a hotelier or working within that sector. You know, how prevalent are people aware of what food safety means and how it could possibly go wrong, and basically to minimise that. But just to lighten the spirits a wee bit, I'm going to take you on a short tour of where the food safety systems really started from. So I would ask you just a show of hands. Did anybody know that the HACCP food safety system started at NASA, the space programme? No, everybody's shaking their heads. Well, let me tell you, it's dead exciting. So at NASA, round about the 1960s, when they were thinking about putting the astronauts into space, they wanted to make sure that the astronauts didn't get sick. That was on the likely occasion that they actually successfully got astronauts into space. Clearly that didn't happen all the time. But when they were up there, I mean, you could be days, weeks, months in space. You needed to make sure that the food that they were getting was safe. We'll all have maybe experienced, if not firsthand, knowing what food poisoning or an upset tummy can be like. Extremely unpleasant. I'll only ask you to imagine what that might feel like in a spacesuit, or if you're in orbit, even more unpleasant, and things float about in space. That's all I'm going to say. But basically the food safety system was there to identify where there were critical points to food safety and predominantly minimising the risk, I would say, for microbiological activity, although there are other risks that can be presented, foreign bodies and so on, in foods. So when NASA worked with the Pillsbury Food Group, they came up with a food safety plan that's now a globally accepted method of working. Has everybody heard of a HACCP food safety plan? Or a cook safe? Yeah, so you've at least heard of it. So that's where it gave birth all those years ago. But it is so popular now that food manufacturers across the world must adopt a HACCP plan or something based on the HACCP principles. It's actually ingenious. It's not particularly complicated, although it is a bit of an anorak topic. But fortunately for me, it's my anorak, so I like it. So ultimately, just taking people through, sense checking if their food safety plan is actually there and if it's robust, and do they take it into the working practices to make sure that risks are continuously minimised where possible. If I could ask people, what does food safety mean to you? So you can either put that in the chat, or Robin, if you want to unmute it, how high is it in your agenda, collectively speaking? I appreciate the climate is what it is, but if we weren't in this climate, where is it in your agenda? Is it something that's always there, or you think it's ticking over in the background? I'd be happy to hear, you know, what it feels like to be you in this sector. I think everybody's still on mute. Are we looking at chat maybe? I'm not seeing the chat. Robin, can you see anything?
The chat, no, there's not much. No.
We're awfully quiet.
Part of daily 10 a.m. meeting, SS commented.
Well, that's good. Good. I think for a lot of places, feedback that I've had so far is it's something that's always happened. It's happening in the background, and you know, nothing bad's ever happened. So we're thinking that we're all safe, and that's pretty much it. And I'm not really sure who looks after it. It's not quite me, but I think it's somebody else. That's often the case. So it's really just for you to have a wee think about how it is in your business.
Kat, did you have? Yep.
Yeah, well, can I? So it's been a while since I've been directly in food and beverage, but the people who are involved in food and beverage think that there is more of a focus on food safety now because of COVID, or that we've become distracted from that because everybody's become aware of washing hands in, you know, March, April, that was the big thing. All of these things that for us as food and beverage professionals, that was a given. Everything that we always did anyway. Are we better at it, or were we always, you know, I think it was always there, but I'd like to know what you guys think.
I think one big part of what brought up with us brought the food safety into a very front and top of agenda was the inclusion of allergens. And of course that's a big part of your food safety, and that really started or brought the food safety into our 10 o'clock meetings, where every day chef brings in the allergens or what are included in our menus, daily menus, and that gets signed off GM and so on. But that also then started when we were talking about and dealing more with allergens, then introduced more areas of the food safety into the meeting. So we go through maybe more weekly basis than daily basis the cleaning and compliance of the HACCP in more all around system.
That's very good, Yes, thank you very much for contributing. I appreciate that. Yes, I think these things are generally brought more at home if you or somebody in your family has been affected, whether it's by a bug or allergens in particular, which if somebody has a severe reaction can hit them very quickly and actually become life-threatening within a matter of minutes. And I hope that none of you have had to experience that, but it is alive and kicking. And as you are proprietors, ultimately you will be responsible. So taking some ownership there and sharing that knowledge is absolutely paramount. So prevention is always better than cure, I think. So the benefits of having a food safety system, clearly you don't have normally I'd like to do some interaction here, but I'll share with you some things that I've had in the past. The staff are confident. Training has been given, appropriate training for whatever it is. The person who's responsible for the food safety programme will know who they are, the manager will know who they are, and you will have enough there to show that the local officials or anybody else that you've got your plan there, it's alive and kicking. It's not just a document that sits on the shelf, and occasionally, once every 6 months or once every year, you'll take it and give it a dust down in a sense, check over it and revise it. And ultimately you will have consumers coming into your facility. They'll enjoy your food, they'll rave about how wonderful your hotel is and how great the food is, but not only how great it is, they won't even think about how safe it is because, well, pretty much they take that for granted, and in normal times that helps keep all the businesses buoyant, which is great. And you don't make the headlines for the wrong reasons, so that's even better. Consequences, on the other hand, you know, they can be disastrous. So there was a hotel not too far from where I am. Barry is familiar with the group Dial of Skye. A number of years ago, they had a wedding party, and somewhere in the region of 50 of the guests contracted salmonella, and that included men, women, and children. On this occasion, there were no fatalities, which is great, but that was a very bad rap for the hotel, extremely unpleasant for the wedding party and all of the guests there as well. But I must share with you that food safety incidents are completely indiscriminate. They can come and catch you if you're unaware at any time. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, what size and scale your business is. If you don't have a robust plan there with appropriately trained staff, something nasty could happen, and it's really not worth taking the chance of. And so when that hotel was investigated, everything within that chain was investigated across the country, not just that location. All these things are gross negative distractions from your business. So once we all get back up and running, we want to make sure that we're as strong as possible. I put something in there also for Cadbury's, who are a bit bigger than Isle of Skye Hotel. And it's just as an example, global company, super big boys in the game, and they also had a salmonella outbreak a number of years ago. And the product lines that they were serving, so whether it's a hotel or a cafe or a food manufacturing business, you're handling food, you have the ability to make it safe or unsafe. 6 of their product lines, including lines that were marketed to children, were recalled for potential for salmonella in it. And it was reported that initially the recall process itself cost them £1 million. The reparatory costs for Cadbury's were more in the region of £20 million. Again, nobody died and they've got deep enough pockets, but £20 million or killing somebody is really not worth taking the risk of. So I would just say, consider that you have your food safety armour there, and whoever is in charge of it is bringing it to life. So on the topic of, Esther, what you were saying about the allergens there, there's a clip there for Pret a Manger. You may have heard that they served a product to a young girl on more than one occasion, actually, and she ate her product when she got onto her flight back home to France and went into anaphylaxis shock on the plane. Sadly, she died very quickly from that, and that really is, I don't want to paint an overly bleak picture. We don't hear about it too much, but it does happen. And it can happen even with the best of intentions. So skill and training and information are critically important. Businesses can close. People do die. Don't let it be us. There was another hotel in Wales where they had a lot of sickness as well. And there was a massive global action against a holiday company where there was a massive payout of over £2 million for food poisoning. So the bottom line is, it can happen. Don't let it happen to your business.
Terry, can I just say, with regard to Pret a Manger, they had 6 opportunities where people had warned them and they didn't have a near misses procedure in place. So they had 6 opportunities where they could have actually have done something about the sesame flour that was in that baguette. And obviously now they have stuff in place. I've actually spoken to the health and safety manager and done a video for a course that we're doing. But yeah, they had opportunities, and that's the thing that we need to be thinking about, listening about near misses as well as potential accidents. Is that okay? Sorry.
That's almost inexcusable, I think, Caroline. Thanks for contributing that. But for somebody who brings it to your attention, and you've had, how they managed to stay in business is actually beyond me, you know. Absolutely shocking. I have seen firsthand what anaphylaxis does to people. I didn't see anybody die, thank the Lord for that, because it was my son. So it's very close to my heart. So how they managed to stay in business, I don't know. Somebody died, and it absolutely could have been avoided. So it is always avoidable. The other nasty thing that's up and coming here is that there will be many people putting claims alerts out. You know, so they will be encouraging, if you've had food, or if you think you've had food poisoning, let's put a claim in, let's go after them, let's try and get as much as we can, you know. So nobody really wants that happening in their business, and we certainly don't want it to happen to any of us who are here trying to support each other. So I'm just really suggesting that you have a sense check, that what you have in place when all this is over is robust enough. Dust it down, sense check it, and make sure it's strong so it doesn't happen to you. And ultimately, when it gets back into better days, that we actually see the income going up, the profits going up, the trade coming through successfully, and everything tracking more in the right direction. So that's absolutely the aim for that. So I would say that it's very difficult for all of us. We have to find new ways of working, reaching out to each other, getting a bit of support and insight from each other, and helping each other where we can. So it will be a case of some businesses not surviving, many of them, it's very sad, and a survival of the fittest. So I appreciate where some people may say we have to batten down the hatches and so on, and I totally understand that, but there can be some magic happening in the background. What can we all be working on to change the way we're working? For example, like this, is there anything in the background you could make stronger? People stronger, systems stronger, processes, supply chain, anything like that. So I would just encourage you to think, what else can you do in the time that we're not doing what we really want to do in the first instance there? And if there's anything that you've learned in this, you know, or taken away of value, then it's been worth having this chat. So thank you all, particularly Essa, Caroline and Kat, for sharing. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody have any questions particularly? Few people have had to go, but I'm just trying to see through. It's interesting a comment that I saw on the chat that a lot of businesses are using COVID as an excuse at the moment for not having proper allergen details on their products. I think that's just a disgrace, really, because it's just compounding the problems we've already got with a pandemic to create more possible damage.
I think for sure that many of us will be very distracted with the current climate, not least of all because the revenue is going down, and a lot of people will be worried about that, and it's true, but maybe forgetting to keep an eye on the other important aspects as well. So it's really just a nudge to try and remember that. And for any business that's there where you don't necessarily have a resident food safety person or somebody to sense check it, that's fine, because again, that would be an additional cost to the business. But some businesses are outsourcing it. So they could still have a tap in or a go-to person to sense check something. And it's not a one-off thing that once it's done 5 years ago, that's it. It needs checked. People need checked. Just sense check it, that's it. And if it's a case of outsourcing it, outsource it, but don't forget about it while we're thinking about all these other things as well. So it's just a reminder on that. We're still responsible. It's a legal obligation. The owner of the business will be held accountable if anything nasty was to happen. Don't let it happen.
Okay. Fine. Thank you very much, Terry. And on that note, I think we'll call it a day for today's forum. Thank you, everybody who's joined us today. I hope you've all taken something from it as usual, and look forward to seeing everybody again in two weeks' time.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Robin.
Bye.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks very much. Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks again, Robin. Another good session, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Cheerio.